How you guys doing? This will be my third vlog of the night. So if you know me at all, you know I'm kind of a fan of the Pitchfork Music Festival, which is descending on Union Park this weekend, which would start tomorrow. But I'm only for the first time going for one day. I've gone 2 to 3 days, depending in past years. But since it would take a really long time to go through each day, I'm just going to give a little blurb about some of the bands playing on Saturday, which is the day I'm going. I don't think the lineup is nearly as good as yesterday, or excuse me, last year, especially in the headliner section. But there's definitely some good stuff, so let's get to it. Opening the day is a band called Atlas Moth and Psychic Paramount. Atlas Moth is, honestly, I haven't listened to that much of the album. It's just very heavy. I think I'm very unfamiliar with metal. I think it would be like Doom. So I think excuse me, I think that would be the genre. Psychic Paramount was actually one of my biggest surprises last year. Um, just a relentlessly heavy, kind of psychedelic post-rock. Just, I think what was so great about it is it just it's so schizophrenic in its tone. Switches from something that's really gorgeous and lilting to something that's just abrasive and just pummeling. Cloud Nothings as well was one of the best shows I saw earlier this year. They just have a ton of energy on stage, and I think maybe I've done a blog post about them, maybe I haven't. But last year they came out with a self-titled, and that was much more in the vein of kind of indie, not indie pop, and just very hyperactive, sugary indie rock in the vein of like something like Superchunk. But this new album, whether it's through the engineering of Steve Albini or simply just kind of new influences and maturity, is much heavier. Uh, he's I think his name Dylan Baldy. I think that's the Cloud Nothings guy. Um, he said that the Wipers were a big influence, but more than the Wipers, I hear a lot of kind of heavier '90s indie rock, like a lot of Albini stuff, like something more like Shellac, something a lot more twisty, naughty indie rock. Um, Further than that, Lotus Plaza is the project by the Deer Hunter guitarist, which I think his name's something like Locke Pundit or something that sounds equally ridiculous. But this was actually a wonderful record from earlier this year as well. Partly because it's just incredibly hypnotic. It's a lot of acoustic guitars just kind of harmonized against each other. But it's also psychedelic and shows some significant chops in how direct and focused it is. Uh, it's very repetitive, but then again, it also shows some really strong, very dreamy songwriting. Not unlike Deer Hunter, but I might like it better actually. Atlas Sound and Liturgy, just a little bit about it. Atlas Sound is actually another Deer Hunter member. Uh, he's kind of hit or miss for me because he's kind of done. It's kind of the psych rock of Deer Hunter, kind of transported to the bedroom atmosphere. So it's much more insular and intimate, but at the same time, it can occasionally become muddled and just kind of overdone. Liturgy is a black metal band who really get a lot of controversy within the community, just because they don't adhere to normal principles involved in metal usually. Next, you have Youth Lagoon, who are another kind of bedroom pop project that seems to pop up all the time. But they had this wonderful song last year. Actually, it's one guy, I believe. Wonderful song called July, which I overplayed to death. Flying Lotus is a electronic producer who actually got to start doing some loops for Adult Swim, and then from there, it kind of jumped off into some new things. A record called LA in 04, 05, I think. But then he also had a great record in 2010 called Cosmogramma, which is just a wonderfully experimental jazz, electronic. It's very much just kind of puts a bunch of different genres in a blender, but then again, it doesn't feel like it's. It feels like it's really very reverent to the traditions of like experimental jazz and things like that. And it's also fun to dance to. Nicholas Jar is another electronic producer who's gotten a lot of credit recently. He plays a lot with Negative Space, and I mean it's not particularly different. I think really the best thing to describe it is just the way he plays with space. Not unlike the way James Blake plays with space, but there's far less keyboard noodling in Nicholas Jar. It's much more low-key. Wild Flag is Carrie Brownstein of Sleater-Kinney's fame, or Sleater-Kinney fame. Her new band, which is kind of a super group with some members of some other bands. They had a very good record last year, so if I do end up going, I'm quite looking forward to that one. Plus, Carrie Brownstein is kind of adorable. Schoolboy Q is a member of the shoot, I can't remember the collective, but it's the LA collective that Schoolboy Q, Absol, Kendrick Lamar are all part of. So they're all kind of upstarts in the rap community. Schoolboy is very much into his weed, but he had a really very good record earlier. Sleigh Bells, it's still my favorite thing I've ever heard them described as, is Run DMC meets Big Black, which that's not mine, so I'm not going to say it as it's, I think that was Christopher Weingarten who described it that way. But it's cheerleader anthem, or cheerleader, why can't I think of the name? Over heavy metal guitar. Like cheerleaders over heavy metal and just loudness. Chromatics as well. Not Chromatics as well. Chromatics is a group who kind of jumped on the Italo disco. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. Italo disco trend. He's also kind of famed because he was originally doing the score for Drive, which is the Nicholas Winding Refn breakout from last year with Ryan Gosling. And so it's very nostalgic. It's very 80s. It's very much sounds like a dream, which you could describe 90% of today's indie rock that way. Hot Chip is an electronic band from England, and they've just been incredibly consistent in finding grooves and mixing humor. Danny Brown is another kind of upstart rapper, incredibly raunchy, but also socially conscious. Hailing from Detroit and with a voice that sounds like a cartoon character, he's actually really entertaining, though I can see how his voice would get old very quickly. Godspeed You Black Emperor is probably the oldest group on this particular bill for Saturday at least. Sorry about that. Godspeed You Black Emperor is post-rock in the vein of something like Explosions in the Sky, or Mono, or Sigaros, that type of thing. Godspeed You Black Emperor, as far as commercial success, I think the biggest thing they did was they did a couple songs on Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later. And they usually have songs like Clock In, about 15 minutes and above, but they're wonderfully grandiose and kind of just charred, expansive rock that just builds and blossoms into just giant climaxes. Grimes, finally Grimes, is another kind of internet phenom who rose up at the beginning of this year. And what's interesting about her is just how idiosyncratic of a personality she is. I mean, she's called her music post-internet and things like that. And there's a lot of, that's not to say that her music is anything that new, though her record is pretty good. It has a lot of basis in kind of 80s, or hard on your sleeve 80s pop, and then some of kind of the 2000s electro pop, things like, and I hear some Peaches in there. I hear just a number of different things. But yes, that is my holy shit 12-minute explanation of the Saturday lineup. So if you listen, I don't know why you are, but this has been my Jblog Day 11. And that will do it for tonight, I think. Maybe I'll have a written post up later. Depends how lazy I'm feeling. All right, later.